Hello and welcome, and I'm delighted to be here with Rachael McGuickin, who's the Director of Business Development at Visits Belfast. And Rachel, it doesn't seem like 2 minutes since we were last here speaking about your sort of start on the sustainability journey and the first time you'd gone in with the Global Destination Sustainability Index. And then, lo and behold, and we see that you've risen a whole load of places and that it's all really coming to fruition. So I just thought it'd be nice to touch base and talk to you about the progress that you've made and how that feels in the city and maybe what your plans are for going forward. Number one, no doubt, knowing you.
Oh, I don't know about that, but thanks, Heather. Well, we're delighted. Belfast is now ranked in the top 10 destinations in the world in the GDS index. We are ranked up 8th. So we are the only UK city alongside our friends in Glasgow to make the top 10. And to be honest, it's a huge testament, I think, of the hard work of our industry partners and our clients and our city in getting that far, because we did start this journey 2 years ago. We were actually second from the bottom. And I can probably say that now. But that was a real opportunity for us to make a difference. So we set out in a very ambitious plan over 2 years to embed sustainability at the heart of everything that we do. A couple of things that we did, I think, that really made a difference. We wanted to get our industry on the journey with us. So we partnered with Green Tourism and Belfast City Council, and we rolled out a very ambitious scheme to get all of our hotels and our venues accredited. And I'm delighted to say that we are currently sitting at just under 80% of all hotel bedrooms in Belfast are certified. And we are very much on track to hit 90%, which will see us up there with the Nordics and kind of very much the top tier of destinations. In doing that as well, we kind of changed our focus as a company. Led by our board, we rewrote our entire business plan, a 3-year plan, and we put sustainability at the heart of it. We employed a sustainability and impact manager to help us drive a very ambitious plan. And also I look after sustainability now on behalf of Visit Belfast. So we've done a lot. We also launched a social impact project called Changing the Menu for Good. And I'm delighted that this year we won the GDS Innovation Award for that initiative. And we'd love to speak to other cities about rolling that out. And really that's about tackling food poverty and food waste in the business events industry, and trying to use essentially business events as a way of helping tackle the problem that many of our cities are facing.
I heard about that the other week. I'm doing the Visit Bis and Impact and Sustainability course, and Jack came to talk to us about it. It's phenomenal what you're doing, isn't it? As far as you can buy an extra course, or you can do different things, and getting everybody involved and delegates as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a multiple problem solver in our industry. So I think the first thing is that we know that, again, particularly post-pandemic, we know as, association community that the power of events and meetings, but also I think that, about how they can do good in different specialisms or field. But also I think that, as event organizers, we're finding that a lot of our clients are coming to us to say, post-pandemic, we're being challenged more on what are we doing on CSR and an ESG, and how do we make sure our event is as responsible and sustainable as it can be. And this really gives a solution to that, because it's a local cause and a real problem that we can kind of make an impact in. And also it's a problem solver for us as a city where, on one hand, we do an amazing job, I would say, of course, you're looking after our visitors, but what about our residents, and those who are most vulnerable in our city? And I think we've got a bit of a responsibility in that respect too. And thirdly, I think from our industry, we probably do need to shine a light a bit on some of the practices around food. I go back to even a couple of years ago, the worst thing that could happen in an event, short of the AV failing, would be that you run out of food, wouldn't it? So as a result, there's this big thing that we over cater, and now we've got lots of dietary requirements, which are good, but I mean, how many of those materialize? And you think of the uneaten desserts, you think of the buffet stations at breakfast at conferences, whenever, certainly for us, most people have had breakfast in their hotel. And there's a big abundance of food at events, and yet a lot of it is going to waste, and there's a challenge with that. So I think this has been a really useful project for us to have a really honest conversation about food is a good thing, it's a positive thing, and how do we make sure that we're more responsible with it at events, and then how do we also make sure that where there is excess food or there is funds or projects that we can support, how do we make sure that they really make an impact?
It's fabulous, and you're hoping to sort of roll that out, aren't you, and to share that expertise with the rest of the industry, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we most cities probably, certainly post-pandemic, and we're talking about obviously the cost of living crisis, which doesn't show any sign of really slowing up. So most cities have this problem. So we actually had a call with another city today, which I won't name, but talking to them about our experience, what we learned along the way, because this was a very new area for us, all of the lessons learned, the highlights, things we maybe would do differently now, and speaking to them about how they could roll that out potentially in their city. So a bit like Copenhagen, we look to Copenhagen as a real model of best practice for legacy and impact. We'd love that perhaps this is in some small way a project that we can, we've rolled out and we've learned from, that we'd love to see other cities and other DMOs maybe rolling out in their city and doing it their way.
Fantastic. And what would you say has been your biggest learning point from doing that? I mean, it must be hard just trying to sort of coordinate everybody and get everybody involved, all the different stakeholders, but around that sort of one common purpose, isn't it? But what would be your main learning point?
I think the collaboration, I know it sounds a bit cliche, but if I explain that a bit further, we knew what the problem was that we wanted to solve. And the first thing we did, and we changed it completely after doing that, was we actually spoke to the food banks and the people working in the charity. So we thought that we knew what they needed. And actually, whenever we spoke to them, we got our eyes opened, but actually in a very nice way, they said, well, actually, this is how you can help. So that was the first thing. And it kind of, if we hadn't had those early conversations, we probably would have gone down a route that maybe wasn't quite what they needed. Well, it was more what we thought they needed. It's actually obvious, right? But the second thing was we brought our industry along with us, and they actually helped us make it better. So we partnered with about 8 or 9 founding partners, as we call them. And that was essentially a couple of our big venues, or a couple of big hotels that run events, and a catering company, and a couple of PCOs, because we were really conscious of how do we make sure that in helping those people who are living in food poverty, we also need to be really mindful that our industry, we don't do anything that's actually going to commercially challenge them. So we had to kind of find that solution. So those are probably the 2 big things, involved. We kind of co-created it with both the charity at the outset and then actually with our industry. And we had some really honest conversations about that, and about, the commercial impact of what we were talking about, and how do we make sure, how do you square the circle essentially on some of this? And actually they came up with better ideas than what we had in our own. So I think that was really good. And because they were part of the process, they've really bought into it, and they feel like it's theirs as well. And actually we're running the Belfast City Marathon in a couple of months, and we're going to do it under the Changing the Menu for Good initiative, and bring some of them along. I'll not be doing the full marathon. I will be doing a 10K, but yeah, so again, it's become a bit of a movement here. And actually, as we rolled it out, and people are using it in a way that we never envisaged, which I think is really nice. So, Jack gave me an example today where there was a organizer who said, what, we have a charity partner, or we're too far down the line in our process that we can't support this through the way that you envisaged. But instead of actually giving out physical awards, which cost a couple of £100, whatever, we're going to give out digital awards, and instead use that money that would have been used for the award and donate it to Changing the Menu for Good. And also we're finding that even if clients or event organizers have charity partners, what people are doing are putting the QR code on the menu, and so delegates are donating themselves. And even if only 10% of the delegates in the room do something over the course of a year, that's massive.
No, it's amazing. And do you think now, you've had this project, and obviously it's sort of still in early doors, and hopefully it will grow and grow, but having these networks and partnerships and really cementing and having common purpose, if the city comes to you and says, actually, as a city, we need this. How can we galvanize everybody? You'll be able to do that more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're really lucky in Belfast because we are a capital city, but it is a bit like a small town and everyone knows each other. And so, we can make changes pretty quickly, which I think is quite nice. And so again, example of our hotels being certified, for example, we started out at 5%, we're now at touching 80 and we're going to be at 90, in breakneck speed, which is really good. And again, we got our industry together and they're really willing to help. I think post-pandemic anyway, every city and our industry is very much, I think there's a big empathy factor where everyone's been through the absolute ringer and come out the other side. And I think there's that feeling of, look, what's it all about? This sort of search for purpose we talk about a lot. And I think that's really front and center. And that's quite nice in terms of then, trying to get projects mobilized and working to people are willing to help, I think. Which is good. And I think they always were, but I think there's more a case of people are a bit less selfless and very motivated to help, whether it's a project or working together on things. So I think that's positive.
And I suppose once they see that what you're doing and you're getting PR about it and positive press about it, more people want to join in because it's a successful thing as well, don't they? Yeah. So it sort of has a momentum of its own, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And sort of finally, I suppose, really, but what are your plans going forward? I was laughing and saying, knowing you'll want to be number one, but is that where you want to be? What are your plans for moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got a couple of big initiatives. We've just done our business plan for the year, and essentially there's a couple of big themes. One of them is that this is the year of carbon for us. We're very much going to have to grasp the nettle on that this year, and we've got a couple of big projects underway. One, we're going to develop a carbon measurement sort of service, if you like, for our event organizers, because everyone's really challenged with this. So between the destination, the venue, and the organizer, we're going to be offering this out to clients so that they better understand what the baseline measurement of their event is, and then how can we, one, design out as much of that as we can as the first step. Two, how do we mitigate where we can, through decisions, and then thirdly, where necessary, how do we offset carbon? So we want to kind of do that as a joint project with our clients. We're going to do that on the business event side. On the visitor and delegate side, we are speaking to a couple of providers about a really good tool that helps delegates plan the most carbon efficient and effective way for their visit. So essentially that will be like a plug-in to our website, and we can do it in a QR code, and that will allow them to say, okay, mode of transport, here's your carbon tonnage. Okay, if you did X, Y, and Z, how would you reduce that? Then once you get here, how are you planning to travel to the venue? Okay, if you do X, Y, and Z, while you're here, here's, our sustainable hotels and that kind of thing, and try and, I suppose, influence where we can and nudge people along that journey. So that's the other thing on the visitor and delegate side. We are also assessing our baseline carbon for their own organisation and Visit Belfast, and also right across the tourism sector. We're working with the University of Surrey to baseline that. So it's a really, really technical area, and it's only probably now in year 2 or 3 we feel like we have the knowledge and confidence in the data to be able to do all of these things well. And I think being part of GDS as well, and having that network and community of people that we can ask, who are also on that journey, helped us. So we're going to do a lot in carbon this year. The other area, again, that social impact piece, we do believe, and Belfast, this year is the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, and we have One Young World here and some major big events. And so we've benefited as a city. We know how good tourism has been for us in terms of as a post-conflict destination, many years ago. But I think now in a cost of living crisis, we know we need to do more on that social impact side. So again, we're going to be scaling up, changing the menu for good, possibly investing a bit more in that. We really wanted to pilot it and see how it goes. And
yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then now we want to kind of scale that up, and we want to roll out that across multiple food banks and charities across the city and possibly across Northern Ireland. So we're going to be doing more on the social impact, and we're also doing an impact dashboard to capture all of the good that comes out of business events coming into the city. And that will be, you know, what are clients doing in terms of funds raised or CSR initiatives? What are they doing through our projects, changing the menu for good, but many of them do their own. What is our industry doing? Again, and many of our hotels are doing amazing things now on CSR, but that needs to be captured so that at the end of the year, we'll have a really good story to tell in terms of advocating for our industry and telling the story of a lot of the good work that our industry do, and you know, which I think is really important, and maybe educating people that tourism and business events just isn't about, you know, the bums and beds and the economic impact. Yeah, that's really important, but actually there's so much more to our industry. So I think that's going to be helpful on a couple of points. One, to actually encourage people to work in our industry, and particularly the future talent and leaders, and I know that's a big challenge. And secondly, educating, you know, policymakers and a lot of the funders, you know, that this is, you know, tourism and business events are a force for good. And here's the facts, here's the evidence, because I think our concern is, you know, in a cost of living crisis, and it's, you know, and potentially a recession coming, we need to really argue the case for our sector. But we need the data and the examples and the evidence base to help do that.
Brilliant. Wow, gosh, you always put so much on your agenda and your schedule, but you always follow through, don't you? So we can't wait to see how that sort of pans out, really. But thanks so much for taking the opportunity to speak to us today.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Heather.